Where would we be without the various products delivered by the men and women in the trucking industry? Healthy Conversations in Trucking podcast is a platform for professional long-haul truck drivers to share their journeys over the road, educating listeners about the trucking industry and lifestyle. Now, let's dive into the conversation on this brand new episode. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Healthy Conversations in Trucking. I am joined by my husband and co-host, Jonathan. Hey, Jonathan.
Hey, Doc. How you doing today?
I am great. This is going to be a fun episode because I get to interview Jonathan to find out about his experience over the road as a truck driver, and gives him an opportunity to share his story. I'm very familiar with it, so I've got to really ask the questions in a way that all of you can hear and understand, and not just have the assumption that you already know him, because I know him. So let's see how we can put this together. Jonathan, you ready?
Yeah, let's try this.
All right, I'm going to ask you the same questions that I asked my guests on the episodes, because I think that these are just designed to help pull out the story and the information. So let's just start off by you introducing yourself. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about who you are and just take it away?
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Jonathan. I have been driving the truck since late 2009. Started out with a big company that puts you through their 3-week school and throw you out in the wolves. It was pretty good for a little while. Then I fell into hauling cars about a year after that. Prior to driving, I was a police officer for about 12 years and really loved that. And one of my other dreams was to play professional sports, although I never made the NFL. I played a lot of semi-pro ball where I did get paid on the weekends. So, you can count that as professional, I guess. So right now I just haul cars up and down the East Coast, and I'm loving it.
I remember when we did our introduction episode for the podcast, you talked about the 3, I guess, goals that you had, or things you always wanted to do when you were little, and you got a chance to accomplish all 3. So not many of us can say that.
Yeah, the one dream was to be a police officer, did that. The other one was to play professional sports. Like I said, I never made the field on Sunday, but did a lot of mini camps and tryouts and things like that. And the third one was to drive a truck. As a young kid, I always saw those North American moving trucks, and I was like, yeah, I want to drive one of those one day. So, never done the North American driving truck, but I've been all over North America.
So, let's see, where do we dive into that? Now, I know you had some influence from family members.
Oh, yeah. My uncle drove for over 40 years. He was actually, his last gig was running mail up and down from Charlotte to Atlanta and back up in there. He also started the 85 Highway Ministries, where him and a partner of his would go to the truck stops and, lay Christian tapes down and talk about the Lord and stuff. So he was a big influence on driving the truck. Now,
I didn't know about the Highway Ministries.
Oh, yeah, he was big in it. You go into all these truck stops, you see back in the day, the cassette tapes. My uncle and his partner would drop probably about 20 off at a truck stop every time they stopped. And they ended up, I think, good thousands and thousands of tapes over the course of these years.
So they just did this while they were, whatever they were hauling, they just had these tapes along with them, or that was the whole thing, the whole purpose of them up and down the road was to deliver the tapes?
No, this is actually when they were driving.
Oh, okay.
My uncle was all over the country, and they'd go home and he would dub these tapes. I think he had a machine that would dub like 20 tapes at a time.
Oh, wow.
And when they were out and about, in the course of their driving week or so, or a month or whatever they did, they stopped the truck stops and talked to the drivers and handed them tapes.
That's interesting. It's every single time I interview a guest, including my husband, I learn something new.
That's right.
So what about time spent on the road? So how much time, I know this, but I want you to explain this. How much time do you spend on the road before returning home?
Right. So when I started out with that the big company out of Texas, it was 3 to 4 months at a time on the road. And anybody that's familiar with owner operators and stuff like that, you take any time off, you lose money. So you had to be on that road. Then I fell into hauling cars from a buddy of mine who I was a police officer with. His brother was a terminal manager, and he asked me if I wanted to haul cars, and I said, sure, I'll try it. So that was basically a home every night type gig for almost 2.5 years. Then changed to another company, where I was out for, I think, 3 weeks at a time, then off for like 2 days. And the company I'm with now is basically I leave Monday and I'm home Saturday. So about a week, no more than a week. Every once in a while you're out for 2 weeks because, getting stuck, run out hours in Tennessee or something like that. So do a reset on the road.
Yeah. So what about travel? Like, where do you typically travel when you're hauling cars?
Well, like BJ from an earlier episode, we work for the same company. So our main contract is BMW. And I guess you could say my territory would be upstate New York and New York itself. So, I pick up in Spartanburg at the BMW plant, and I travel up to Albany, New York, or Orange County, or Poughkeepsie, and turn around and try to do those twice a week.
This is where I kind of transition into what you really like about it, some of the favorites. So I've heard you talk so much about different parts of the country, and we've got this growing list of all the amazing places that you've seen that we would like to travel on our own one day, which I think is pretty exciting. But is there a favorite now? I guess to kind of put it into full context, I know you just described, work up and down the East Coast for the most part, but you have traveled across country and all over the states.
Oh, yeah.
So is there a favorite part of the country or a favorite state that you like to travel in?
Well, being, an auto hauler and stuff, the factories close and shut down to retool for the new year's models coming out. So, companies got to find things to do. So we usually pick up soldiers' cars. They're coming back from overseas. We'll pick them up by, let's say, like in Charleston or Atlanta, and we'll ship them to San Diego or even up to Tacoma, Washington. So that's usually, during summer times when freight is slow. So I think I really look forward to that because it gets me back out west, and I love the West Coast. I love, Midwest up there in Wyoming and Utah and Oregon and some of the places up there, and even springtime North and South Dakota and Nebraska. It's flat, but it's real peaceful out there. And of course, I always love running through the desert too, down there in New Mexico and Arizona into the southern part of South California. So, if I had to pick a favorite spot in the United States and the 48 states, it would have to be the Midwest and West Coast.
Now, why is that your favorite?
Well, I don't get out there as much. The scenery is different. Whenever you can break up your driving habits or your norms, it gives you a new freshness, so to say, for driving. It puts a little bit of spunk back into your kickstart, and it feels good. And then you come back over to the East Coast and you run your same lanes. You're back up 95 North or 81 North. And anybody who's traveled 81 North or South knows what kind of a mess that highway is. Same thing with 95 in DC. So I think, running out west, it's wide open spots. You do hit some major cities here and there, going to California, but I think the best part is when you go into San Diego, the southern part, there's not really any major cities. But when you get back on the East Coast, back in the run of things, it gets stressful again, and you get aggravated, and you try to find ways around wrecks, and you just find yourself lost sometimes.
So why do you like the desert? You mentioned that.
I love seeing the sand and the cactus in the mountains. There's a place out in Texas you go through. It's called Texas Canyon, or actually that's in Arizona, but just stuff like that, huge boulders, sitting on the side of the road, probably weigh, 25, 35 tons, just sitting on a little pebble. I was wondering how they got there, or how they stay, and things like that. Just when you first start out in Texas, the big trees, and you get out towards El Paso, there's no trees. So it's just how the land flows across the country. It's amazing to me.
Yeah. So what do you like most? What's your favorite thing about what you do?
My office is looking out through a windshield. So I never see the same thing every day. Even if I'm, doing Albany twice a week, there's always something I see that I haven't seen before. And going up that road, up and down 81, because I grew up right outside of Syracuse, New York, and came down to college in 91 in Newberry, South Carolina. So I've been on 81 since, 1991. And I still see something different every time. So what I really like about it is my office is through my windshield, interacting with different people from different states and backgrounds and things of that nature. It's enjoying. I like it a lot.
So in that same vein, then, what do you like least about trucking?
Well, in the industry I'm in, and I'm sure a lot of haulers could, agree with this. It's loading and unloading in the weather and the elements. If you're loading in Brunswick, Georgia, in the middle of the summer, the asphalt's 125 degrees. So you touch a black car and it's going to burn your skin. And of course, you're, sweating. It's miserable. On the flip side, like it is now, it's 5 degrees in Albany, New York. So unloading and loading in 5 degrees. It's cold, it's snowing, and, your decks don't want to move because, the hydraulic fluid, and it's just so cold, it just doesn't want to move. So I would have to say the elements of loading and unloading a truck.
Mm. So let's shift over a little bit and let's talk about health-related challenges, tips, advice, and so forth. What is the biggest health-related challenge for you personally over the road as a truck driver?
Consistent diet. I try to prep, we try to prep food at the house and take it on the truck. That works for a little bit, but then life gets in the way and you forget to prep. So then you grab some stuff from the store, some Kind bars or protein bars and stuff like that. And you try to munch on those for a little bit, but then you get to a spot and you're like, well, I'm kind of really hungry, so I want to have something to eat. And there's, the truck stop, there's really nothing there good to eat. Or you have your favorite, resting spots or sleeping spots, and there might be a local, restaurant that you go to. And it's a great restaurant. They just don't offer, they offer the comfort foods. They don't offer the healthy foods. Mm-hmm. So I think the biggest, challenge on the road is finding that consistency of health and eating healthy.
Yeah, definitely. This has been just in the few interviews we've had so far, preparing for this podcast. I've heard that as a recurring theme with the food, the challenge with food. Right. So how are you personally addressing your challenge? This, trying to get the healthy food. I know you mentioned us preparing, and as you said, sometimes it can flow well. And then other times it's, like you said, life happens. It's just very difficult, especially when you're only home for a short window and there's all these things that you have to do along with preparing to get ready to go back on the road. So I definitely understand that. But what are some of the other things you're doing to address this challenge of healthy eating food?
Well, I think what I do is I drink nothing but water when I'm on a road. I know that helps. You stay away from sodas and stuff and sugars and things of that nature. I just try to limit when I eat. Sometimes it's difficult. More times it's easier because, you're on a set schedule. But if you got to push and get something there, you might be driving at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and that's sleep time, but your body's up and wants to eat. So And then, driving 11 hours a day, 700 plus miles, to get back to get the next load, you get bored. So what do people do when they get bored? They eat and snack on things. So I try to have healthy snacks, and not always the healthiest snack in the world, but that's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah. When I spoke to BJ, he said he tries to avoid anything in the bag, eating out of the bag, like potato chips.
That's difficult.
Yeah. But that's a good concept, though, trying to kind of prepare yourself with the healthier snacks and anticipating those times when you get the munchies, I guess.
Right.
Let's see. If there's someone listening to this episode and maybe they're a driver, or maybe they're facing some similar challenges as you, or maybe it's someone thinking about coming into trucking and they're, thinking about this over the road trucking in particular, do you have just a bit of advice or tip that you could offer other drivers who may be facing something similar?
Yeah, always have food and always have water on your truck. Now, I know that might sound contradictory, but if you have food on your truck and you know what it is, you know what the contents of it is, you know what you can eat, how much you can have, and you try to space out your food and your water, when you get to a truck stop, you're not scrounging for food. Like, you don't go to the counter and get your fuel stuff and see the pizza there or the wings and the potato chips and all this other stuff at the counter that's right there in your face. You're like, well, I got stuff on the truck. So not only are you save money, but you're going to save yourself from eating all that garbage and junk food there. So try to pack your stuff, try to pack your truck with high proteins and protein bars, or I do a lot of the tuna fish in the bags. So I keep a bunch of those on the trucks, and Kind bars, and try to have low sodium, low calorie like snacks. One of the things that I learned from a really good friend of mine is peanut M&Ms, very low sodium and calories and carbs. So if you munch on a couple of those just to get the hunger off, it's a good snack for you, believe it or not. And drink plenty of water. Always have the water on there so you don't have to use the Pilot free drinks that's on your rewards cards. So I think the more food you have on the truck and the more conscious you are of having the food on the truck, you might be better off. And you got to throw a little bit of exercise in there. I've been using our resistant bands when I stop for my 10-hour break and things like that, just to get the blood pumping and keeping the body up.
That's great tips. I also, I think it was John Elston I talked to, and he talked about the similar conversation around food and having, preparing food and having it on the truck. He talked about, we talked quite a bit about fresh fruits and vegetables and so forth, but he said those little, when you can't always refrigerate or have access to it, but just like fruit cups, where it's a way to get a dose of fruit in, may not be optimal, if you can't get fresh, but just like you said, having something on the truck where you don't have to worry about refrigeration or storage, has a long shelf life. Some fruit cups and things like that could be, now I'm adding to. And I'm also...
Yeah. And knowing John, I know what kind of truck he drives. So, you could do jumping jacks in his truck. If I try to stand up, I'm going to get knocked out by hitting the ceiling. I can't stand up in my truck. So therefore, the space in it is very limited. So I do have a cooler, but I had to take the front seat out, passenger seat, to get the room for the cooler. Mm-hmm. So yeah, if you could pack stuff on there like that, or maybe if you had a microwave in your truck, I have no place for one. So, you could prepare your meals a lot better that way. Mm-hmm. So I, people, I know you and the kids and everybody else think I'm weird, but I do eat the soups cold, the Progresso soups and things like that. Driving down the road, pop the top, and go at it. So,
well, that's another. Well, we do. We used to. Well, we still kind of think it's weird that you eat the canned foods cold, but we understand. But I also have been learning that with Now, whoever's listening, please consider being a guest, because I want to talk to all truck drivers. This is not just one-sided with car haulers. We just happen to know a lot of car haulers. But I think it's interesting to hear from different, like, for example, we'll go back to John Elston, because he's not a car hauler, and you just described his truck and his cab of his truck in the space. And so those are very important differences in, I've been hearing that, I think it was BJ that talked about, again, the limited space, because you need all of that headspace that's another car you can get over your head. And that's money that,
exactly.
You can haul,
That's right.
So I understand all those reasons why, but that does present a different set of challenges compared to other types of cabs. So, from where I sit, I'm really gathering some distinguishing differences here, with the different types of trucks and what you're hauling and challenges as well. So,
Right.
Well, thank you, Jonathan, for taking some time and sharing about your journey. And again, every time I interview a guest, I learn something new, including some new things from my husband. But I appreciate you for all that you do for the country, for us as a family, and thank you for being on this podcast.
Well, thank you, Doc. I appreciate it too.
Thank you for listening to the Healthy Conversations in Trucking podcast. Learn more or be a guest on a future episode by visiting healthyconversationsinTrucking.com or simply HCITpodcast.com.